Hello, this is Poor Nelson with part 5 of the minigame tutorial series for Unity. It is the last section. So topic 1, we're going to implement some sound. So add sound to the bow and the arrow, audio listeners, things like that. We're going to do tracking and displaying the score, so static objects, talking about dynamic text and mesh colliders. And then we're going to be displaying an animated GUI. So as we shoot this arrow, as it hits a target, the score will actually appear on top of the arrow where we shot it. So it's pretty cool. And we're going to be using camera space, GUI, animated GUI, talking about animation, which is actually very, very cool. All right, without further ado, let's jump in. So we want to just do a little bit of housekeeping. So go ahead, go to lighting settings. That made it really big, so I'm going to just scale this down here. So down here, it's fog. Going to create some fog. What color do you want? I usually like a blue color, so I can go ahead and do the eyedropper and pick the sky right there. And now it's going to get some fog. Not a ton of fog, but it's enough to make it look a little bit nice. That's a small improvement that we like quite a bit. Made some changes. I added some sounds, obviously. And as you play those, I can't give these away because these are commercial bought. So I can use them, but I can't give them away. Sorry about that. One of them I made, but you don't want it because it's crud. It's this one. Listen, it's hilarious. Oh, it's so bad. Okay, there we go. And then we got this nice little song that we're going to be playing to in the background. I like it. So we're going to go ahead and be adding these different sounds. So minimizing these, creating a music. Game music empty. There we go. And so I'm just going to drag and drop this music here. It's going to play on awake, which is good, and we want it to loop. So that's all we need for the music. It's going to play in the background over and over and over again. The next thing we want is the two sound for the draw sound and the release sound. So go to the player, go to the bow, and then create two empties. Let's call this bow sound, or better yet, maybe string sound. Yeah, because it's the sound of the string. And then just drag and drop that and create another empty. Let's call this release sound. And there we go. And drag that in. Now we do not want this to play on awake, otherwise it's going to be really bad stuff. We do want the string sound to loop though, but we don't want the other one to loop. Now the last thing that we're going to add is go to the prefabs, the arrow, and we want an impact sound. So go ahead, audio source here, and let's go for the arrow hit wood shield. There we go. Just like that. Do not want it to play on awake, do not want it to loop. So now we have these four sounds, and we just have to reference these via code. So let's think about the string. We have the string release and the string pullback, so the code that affects that is the shoot code. So I go here. Let's create two serialized fields. The first one is going to be audio source, which is the audio source, obviously. Let's call this string sound. And another serialized field that we can put into the editor. Audio source, and call this release sound or fire sound, I guess. I don't know, whatever you want. So now we have these two things. So when are we going to play the string sound? It's when we're going to start pulling it back. Now, as we have get mouse button, if we keep playing this, it's going to keep playing every frame. So what we want to do is we actually want to say if input dot get mouse button down, because add 0, because now as I click, it's going to start to play this. So string sound dot play. Very easy. It's just going to play the sound. Now get mouse, trying to think through this just a second, give me a thought. So we're playing it as we click down. We want to stop playing when the pull amount is 100, excuse me. So I can say if pull amount is greater than or equal to 100, then we can say string sound dot stop, and it just stops it. So if my pull amount is maxed, it stops the string sound. That's exactly what we want. We also want to stop it if we release the arrow before it's 100, so just copy and paste it in the get mouse button up. So now we want the fire sound when we get the mouse button up. And that's it. Okay, so we have the music, the draw, and the release. So we have the three different things. And now we just need the arrow impact. Let's logic through this. The easiest time to play this is when we do the embed behavior as it hits something, right? So let's go ahead and go to the embed behavior. And we need to reference this. So audio source, impact sound. And so as embed, it plays. So audio impact sound dot play. And now let's go ahead and make these references. So on the arrow, down on the audio source, embed. Oh, not serialized. Sorry about that. Serialized. Yep, now it propagates. And then we want the sound. Where's that sound at? Impact sound. Oh, it's an audio source. So I need to just drag, not that, just the audio source. Boop, just like that. I just made a boop sound, if you're wondering. So now I go to the bow. Let's go ahead and unlock this. We have the, where's the shoot behavior? It's not there. I thought it was on the arrow spawn. Where's that at? Let's go ahead and look. Oh, it's after the audio source for some reason. So string sound, drag and drop that, and the release sound like that. Now let's see if it works. So it's going to be playing the strong, string flow back, string released, and then the impact. Oh, did you hear that? We'll talk about that in just a second. That was kind of an interesting start sound. But we'll ignore it for now. So pulls back, releases, hits. Looking pretty good. Little delayed on the impact sound. And the bow's a little bit, like it's too low. It's like, I don't want it that low and gravelly. So, just a little off. So, 9% done. So let's go to the string sound. Let's change the pitch up to about 1.5. Put the volume down like that. Loop is good. Release sound. Volume maybe just a little bit lower. Maybe just 0.5. Let's go ahead and go to the prefab of the arrow. What am I looking at? It's plain, it's good. Oh, it's because the random arrow is just right over here. So delete that, and that's why it played in the start. Let's change the sound down to about 0.5 as well. Give or take. Raise the pitch just a slightly amount to make it a little bit higher pitched. Let's see what happens. Now the string sound sounded great. The quietness is good. It sounds a lot more realistic. It's kind of hitting. There's a delay on the hit, as you can hear that. So we'll fix that. So let's go ahead and open up a different program, Audacity. Audacity. I have no idea how to say that. I always just say Audacity. So I'm going to drag and drop this arrow hit to it. So drag and drop it there. Yep. Make a copy. It's easy. And then I can just select this long line of blank and just hit delete. And now it just plays straight off the bat. So now we have this saved and the arrow impact sound is updated. Let's see how this plays out. Ooh, much better. Alright, I'm liking how that sounds. So now that we have the sound implemented, I'm going to turn off this audio listener. That's actually probably not the best way to do it. It's better to go to game and then there's an audio, play audio on play, and you can turn that off. But anyways, there you go. So now we're going to add a GUI for the score. So let's create a text. Oh, actually we want to create colliders for this first, excuse me, so that we can get the different scores. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my old target file. So this good old thing. Go ahead and tab into this. Turn off backface selection. C-select, Shift, Alt, right-clicked. There you go. And then you can hit D to duplicate, and then P to separate. And now I have its own mesh right there. So let's hit M, move it up. And now let's do the same thing for the Alt, right-click, Shift D, P, and then, oops, need to move this, M, move it up, and then we have it in the same thing. Now I can basically just join these two things. So Shift select, and then Control J, join them. E to extrude this. Okay. And then I'm going to move it a little bit forward so that the collider is up before the mesh. So L, P to separate, L, P separate, L, P separate, etc. Let's call this collider. .000. Okay. And then just basically Control C, Control V, and go through all this. The naming conventions are a little messed up, and we'll just go through and clean those up any way we want, because it's changing the other ones retroactively, not the new one. So it's 1, 2, 3, 0, and 4. So we want this one to be 4, and we want this one to be 5. So I have all these, select them all, hit File, Export, .fbx, selected objects, experimental, go into the assets models, and just name this target collider. Just like that. Okay, and export it. So now as we go into Unity, let's go to this target here. As 1, 2, 3, 4. So I want to create 5 different empties to put these different mesh colliders on. So area 1, Control CV, and you can see that I need to change these to 2, 3. I think I just learned something from Unity, an easier way. Let's just call this parentheses 1. And now when I copy and paste it, it should do this. Oh, wait just a second. The space needs to be there. So area, space, parentheses 1. Now check this out. This is kind of cool. Control C, and you can see it just updates the names. So let's go ahead and do Mesh Collider. The mesh, we're going to go ahead and go to the models. So I'm going to lock that. Target Collider. We have these different meshes that we can drag and drop into it. So if I just want the center, not that. Yeah, actually grab this one. Yep. And it puts that. Let's unlock this. Now I just need to do it for the remaining 4. So I just select all these. Why do all of these have mesh colliders? That's weird. Let's put one on here. I don't quite know what's going on. So there, oh, it's because it's locked still. When I said unlock it, I don't click it. Unlock it. There we go. Now we can add mesh colliders to these. There we go. So now I can just go individually, drag this one, boop. I just said boop. And I'm just going to drag and drop these, like so. And now they all have their individual mesh colliders. As I zoom in, you can see it's slightly before it, which is good. So now I can do different functions on each of these, which is good. So I'm going to apply this to the target. Now I'm going to be using text to basically track the score, right? Not track it, but display the score. So if you go to the game, you can see down in the middle bottom there, it's down there. So if you hit F, you can kind of zoom in. So canvas is the holder of the UI. Text is the actual text. So I'm going to move it up here, scale it up. As you can see, it's really bad color, so I'm going to change it. And it's, you don't want to scale it because it's really bad resolution. So change it to 111, change the font size, and then we just need to make the box, the transform bigger like that. So move it like this. Scale it down to the size you want using font size. And that's about the size. Let's call this score text. It really doesn't matter what the text is right here because we're going to affect that via code. So as I get points, I can actually find this text and change it. So let's create some scripts. Let's create something called a score manager. Okay, pull this up, and we want to use using Unity Engine.ui, because now I can reference the text and the canvas and things like this. So public int, I'm going to call this score equals 0. I make it public because I'm going to affect it from other methods. I'm going to call public static. Static means I can call this from anywhere without having to try and reference. So I'm creating a score manager that's static, so I can call the score and affect it from other scripts. Okay. So instance equals this. So wherever I put this, it's going to become my score manager. The next thing we want is a serialized field here, and we're going to call this a user interface text, or just text, excuse me, score text. So we're going to drag and drop the text there. Now in the update method, we basically want to do score text dot text, so the text within this text component. And we're going to say point space plus the score plus 2 strings, so it's going to make it into a string. So again, let's go over this. We got the variable text, and within there, there's a variable called text. Okay, and then we're just setting it equal to whatever we want it to say. That's basically it. So one more script to work with this. We're going to call this points tracker, or point tracker, excuse me. And I'm going to apply this to different colliders of the target. Not this target. Probably the other target. Oh, there it is. It's a prefab. I don't know why it's not updating the other targets, but I'll figure it out later. So at each one of these different targets, I can apply this. And then we're going to find the score manager and update this. So let's create an empty and create a score manager here. Apply the score manager script to it. And there's not a serialized field, so maybe I just did not build this. Go ahead and compile this. And there you go. So now I can drop the score text there. We're good to go. So we got the point tracker here. Now we need a public variable, int, not indexter. Let's call this value. So the value of the different targets area. So we're going to say 50, and then we want, trying to think here, on trigger enter. So basically when the bow, or excuse me, the arrow hits this, this is going to change the value, change the points in our score manager. So we go score manager.instance dot score, so it's find the variable in that instance, plus equals points value. Oh, excuse me, not points value, just value. And then that should work. As I go to this target, different areas, add the points tracker, so I can change it. So the first one's 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. So let's go ahead and shift select these, put point tracker, and I just change these individually. 40, 30, 20, and 10. Now when I play this, it should go ahead and change it. But there's a couple mistakes that we made. So we're going to go ahead and fix those. The first mistake is go ahead and go to Blender, and the colliders are actually backwards. So we need to go recalculate the normals. And you can see that it turns into brighter color because our normals were actually inverted. So I'm just going to go through these. A, select all, recalculate, tab out, tab in, select A, etc. So we're just going through these and recalculating all these. And now I can just export this back to Unity. And that will take care of everything. Yep. But inside the code, there's also, well, not the code, excuse me, we also need rigid bodies, because triggers don't work without rigid bodies. So don't use gravity, is kinematic, and now it's going to be great. So now as we hit it, it changes the points. Ah, cool, huh? Just like we want it to. So now we have one last thing we want to do. As we shoot the arrows, as they hit these different things, we want to basically show a score at the point of impact. because we can't really shoot, then look up and see the new score. We want to just shoot and see the score that we got. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a new scene here. And I'm going to create a prefab for this text. So let's do text. And we can actually create a prefab of this. I'm going to move this up to the middle. So I'll just put it right up there. Click the canvas and then render mode screen space to camera. We don't want the original. Let's change it. So scale that up like that. Change it so it's centered in the middle, and then crank up the size. So if it says 50 points, it's going to be about that big. Let's make it bold. And we want it about like that. Now we want the color to be about bright orange-ish. So that's going to be the text that we're going to be displaying. As it hints, it's going to instantiate, and then I also want it to be animated, so it's not just going to be like 50 and just sits there. So I could right-click this, and then in the animation window, if you don't have the animation window, go to Window, Animation, and as an animation window. Or you could create a new animation in the prefabs. Just call it text animation, and then drag and drop it onto the text, and it kind of feels like the same workflow of scripts. So now I have this animation, click the record button. Anything you do this text will create a keyframe. So basically make an animation. So I can make the alpha 0, Control C, and then click on the frame you want, Control V. So let's move it just to like 100. So it's staying transparent from the start to end, but I don't want to stay transparent. So I'm going to create another one, increase the opacity there. So now it starts at 0, goes up, and then goes back down, so it fades out. It's looking pretty good. But I also want this text to kind of animate upwards, right? So I can go ahead and go to the very last frame, move it to where I want to be at the end, and now the animation starts and moves up like that. Yeah, pretty cool. Now if you want it to be faster, you can change the samples right there. And that's what it's going to be doing. So call this impact text, and let's just drag and drop it into the prefabs. And now we can instantiate it, okay? And we can move it based off of code, which is going to be really cool. So don't need to save the scene. Let's just go ahead and open one of our old scenes. And now what we're going to do is go ahead and change some scripts. So with the point tracker, as it impacts, that's where we want to instantiate this. So using Unity UI, so I want to go ahead and go, sorry, just thinking here. I need a serialized field. Let's call this game object impact prefab. So that's going to be the texts. So now I go game object underscore text equals instantiate, and now it's the prefab, so impact prefab, the position, so collision transform dot position, and the rotation, so collision transform dot rotation, and that'll instantiate it. But we have to do it as a game object. So the next thing I want to do is underscore text. So it's taking this thing, which is pretty much the canvas, but that's a little confusing. So get component in children, rect transformation in the child of the text. I'm finding that, and that's going to be dot position equals. So now this is where we wanted basically to equal the camera's position. So I do camera dot main, which is the main camera. If you don't have it, you can do it in the tags. There's a tag that says main camera. Dot world to screen. And then it needs a transformation, so collision dot transform dot position. And there we go. So what this is doing, it's taking the text, which is actually the canvas. So maybe let's just change it right here. So canvas and canvas here. So it's taking the canvas and finding a component in its children, which is rect transformation, and then moving this to be the main camera's world screen position, and just find the XY variables of that and moving it. So the next thing we want to do is we're going to go and underscore canvas dot component in children text dot text. So change the variable. We're going to equal it to the value to string. So the value of this different code will be shown. So let's go ahead and check this out. So I go to my target that I want to, and go to the different places. And it says impact prefab. I can go ahead and do impact text. And now let's check it out. And you can see it's changing the score based off that and positioning it. Now, the only problem is it's creating a lot of these impacts texts that aren't disappearing. So as you see up at the very top, it's saying impacts text, impact text, impacts text. And so we don't want that much, right? So we can go ahead and destroy this via code. So in the code, destroy, and what do we want to destroy? The canvas. After how long? 3 seconds. And that takes care of everything. It's kind of nice. So as I'm looking at the game, looking at the player, camera, audio, listener on, let's see. Now, the points actually aren't quite where we want them. Did you see as we move the camera how it actually changed it? So we want the score points to be in the upper right. So you go to the text option and then that left little thing. It's basically where it's going to scale it from, so the upper left corner. So now you can see that's exactly where we want the points 40, 90, 140 at. So that's good. Now, as I was kind of playing around with this, I did see a mistake. It's not doing screen space like we're talking about. I'm hitting that and it's going way in the center. So that code really didn't work the way that we thought it was working. So I'm going to go to a new scene and I'm going to change something very subtle, very small about this. Go ahead and drag and drop that prefab there. Okay, there's the prefab. It's just staying in the center, right? So the screen space camera in the render mode isn't working. So I'm going to do world space and then scale this to 0.001, 0.001, 0.001. All right, let's try 0.005 or 0.05. So now, as you move the position of this, you can actually move it in the world space. So you can kind of see as I move it, it's going to be just wherever I instantiate it, which is nice. But as it spawns, it's going to be inside the mesh, so it's not always going to be shown. So we're going to create a new layer. Let's call this UI2, I guess. Well, I don't know. And then we're going to go ahead and apply it to this canvas. UI2, yes, change children. Hit apply. There we go. So now the impacts text is positioned at 000, scaled to 0.05. It's exactly where we want it. Going ahead and going back here. And now as I shoot this, it's spawning at 000, so you can't even see it basically, right? So let's go ahead and go back to the script. We are going to go to the point tracker here and trying to look right here. We don't need this, so I'm just going to comment that out. So that's exactly what we want. Just comment that out, and now you can see as I shoot it, boop, it appears way too big, and you can also see it's kind of appearing in the mesh, right? So first thing is I'm going to affect it so it doesn't go through it like it is. So I'm going to create a camera on the camera. So there's basically 2 cameras. Go to culling mask U2, so it's going to only show the U2 layer on this camera. But if I change it to clear flags depth only, it's basically going to layer this. So do you see the little depth thing there? The lower it is, the farther back it is. So if I do depth of 1, it's going to render it in front of everything with depth of 0, which is the main camera. So it's going to cull only the U2, clear the depths only. And now as I shoot this, check this out. Here we go. Yeah. It's hitting exactly where it's supposed to be. Now again, it's way too big. So we're gonna basically change that as well. So going over here, go to the prefabs, canvas, impact text, 0.01. Let's see how that works out. Uh-oh. 0.001. That's probably going to be too small. Let's check it out, though. 0.001. It's going to be teeny. Yeah. Do you see how small that is? You can actually still see it. So let's change it to 0.01. And that will pretty much do it for the tutorial. So your homework for tonight is to make more GUI effects. Create different points for the different targets. So as you hit the center, it's going to be that gold text. As you hit something of less value, it will be a different animation, and so forth. Have 3 different text styles when you hit the target. Cooler effects for high points. Also add animation to the display text. So as it hits, what am I looking for? As it hits, the text in the upper left-hand corner will actually animate as well. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope it was useful. We learned a lot of things, and if you like it, subscribe, hit like, check us out on Patreon. Thanks again.